Hey, it's Cannonball Nation. It is March 13th, 2025, and today it is Open Mic, and we're for questions series, and then we're also going to talk a little bit about the proposal that CMS just dropped on us all. Was it yesterday or the day before? My days are running together. Looks like it's a light room. I have a feeling part of that is because a bunch of y'all are in the air flying to Washington currently for our top agent trip that starts on Saturday evening. I fly out Saturday morning. Melissa is already there. She's been there since yesterday, and scoping everything out. And I'll catch up on Saturday, and everybody else I think is leaving early too. They're going up a little bit early too. So that'll be fun. And then some people are on spring break, of course. Canada doesn't have spring break till next week, but I know others are. So there's that. We actually, Drew, my handyman guy, he started planting my garden today. I have a greenhouse and such here at the new property, and I wanted to do a big garden, and he started planting it. So that's starting to come together. I'm excited about that. In fact, after we get off this call, I'm going to go to Home Depot. So before we get into the whole road proposal, does anybody have any complicated issues, client questions, or anything like that they need answered, need help with, any cases? We'll start with that. Christy?
Yes, ma'am.
You don't got anything?
Oh,
Was it in the office today?
Oh, sitting in the office. Yeah, nothing on the top of my head right now.
Oh, that's good. That means the office is being handled today. Well, awesome. That was easy. Like I said, y'all are rock stars. Either that or things are just going pretty easy. So ACA or CMS rather just dropped kind of a big old set of proposals. I know Regina says she read some of it. Has anybody else read any of it?
Yes, I read it last night.
Did you read the whole 134 pages, Christy?
No, I did not.
Oh, come on now. So I actually was talking with one of my other friends, insurance friends, of course, about it. And we were going kind of back and forth through it and looking at the things that ultimately are grabbing our attention. I think some of them are pretty obvious, right? The fact that they want to end enrollment season on December 15th. Everybody's like, well, that's the way it was. Well, no, it was like that for a year or two in the middle, but it didn't start off that way. In the beginning, we had until February 15th to enroll. And then it went to January 15th, and then it went to December 15th. But then we kept getting extensions on the December 15th. So then they moved it back to January. So December 15th didn't work the first time, or the first two times they tried it, and ended up having to give us an extension. So I don't know why they think it's going to work this time around. So that's one of my bigger concerns, just because it's really hard, especially because of all of us do Medicare too, to get to all our Medicare people and all our ACA people, at least with the December 15th outline. We always had, kind of a little safety net there that we could go back and still get people situated. And if they take that away from us, I think we're going to hurt on that. They're also pulling the low income subsidy. Now, that wasn't a thing before COVID. That happened after COVID. We did lots of ACA prior to COVID with a whole lot less headache, to be quite honest. So that piece doesn't really bother me too much. I don't know what you guys think of it, but for me, I'm not too worried about that. They're changing up some rules around the fraud and things, and looks like they're trying to change some portal accesses and things like that. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I know how I feel about the fraud, so I'm for anything that actually solves it. But so far, everything they've implemented really solve it. It's maybe slowed some of it down, but I think that's partially just because it's slowed everybody down. So even the fraudsters can only do so much in a day. So if it really alleviates the problem, I'll be happy to kind of see it. But I'm hoping it's not just another Band-Aid on top of the 45 other Band-Aids they give us, and ultimately just making our lives more difficult and without solving anything. Some of the other stuff I saw in there, has to do, it was kind of a weird verbiage, and it's way down in there. It talks about non-pediatric dental and vision and things like that. Like it sounds to me like they're going to try to make it no longer allowed on the plans. So in the beginning, there was no dental on the plans, right? And only children's vision was there. But over the last few years, when they've been trying to kind of mirror an Advantage plan, some of the carriers started throwing dental, vision, over-the-counter benefits, things like that on there. So the way I was reading it is that they're basically going to say you can't do that, from what I was reading in there. And then there was a lot of chatter in there about group, and I was kind of putting the two pieces together. And I'm thinking maybe the reason they're doing that is because a lot of people are coming off a group, right? And going into the ACA now that the family glitch thing's been a thing for a while and they're figuring that out. But yet, with Republicans in office, they don't want every Tom, Dick, and Harry on ACA, right? They don't want us to go to socialized healthcare. So I think their standpoint is we're going to take some of the stuff away that's like an Advantage plan and get it back to just a health insurance plan to get some of these people who really should still be on group, because they get all that on group, and then this is just a few dollars cheaper, so they're jumping over here when they should be on group. I think they're trying to get them back over to group to get them off the taxpayer budget and back on the employer budget, and then get group health more stable again, because group health is not as stable as it was. There's been a lot of wonkiness to that, and with the 2025 Inflation Reduction Act, it kind of hurt on the group health too because of this whole prescription drug deal. So their group health is probably needing a win. And this might be something to help kind of get people back over to group if we're not offering health insurance plans that look like an Advantage plan. So that part was interesting. Any thoughts on that from your guys' point of view?
On the group, Rebecca, how's that gonna affect, like, there's a lot of companies now that they only want to cover up like 50% of your of the family costs, like, or they don't want to cover your spouses, they only offer it to you, or like the one job I had before I went independent, you could get it and then they would pay 50% of yours, but if you had your family on it, your spouse, your kids, you had to pay 100%. So how would that work?
Well, I mean, that's always been a thing, right? Legally in the group world, the only legal portion that the group has had to pay in the past is 50% of the employee. That's all they've ever had to pay. So if an employer paid any more than that, you had a very generous employer. And they were never responsible for paying any of the family. I mean, the family glitch is still there. They're not taking away the family glitch, not that I read. And it was something I don't think they ever intended for the family glitch to happen. I think the original lawmakers didn't think about it. And then the way it was written, it ended up being written really bad that they were kind of stuck because they never thought it through. So when they fixed the family glitch, I honestly think it was more of fixing something that should have never been there. And so they kind of reverted back and put some other language in there. And I don't think that's going to go away. So if you have like a family that's not offered healthcare or is offered healthcare through the group but not being paid for, that's always super expensive. So unless you're somebody that's just making a ton of money, ultimately you are going to qualify for the family glitch. So they can come off and still get the ACA, but the employee has been coming off as well, when a lot of times it's pretty much affordable. It's like $2 different, and they're trading a PPO for an HMO. And I think the government's thinking they're trading that because they can also get the dental and the vision and the gift card, the free money honey stuff that people have been advertising that's bogus. And ultimately it's hurting the group stability. But I think as far as the family goes, like your concern, I don't think that's going to be affected. They're still going to be able to utilize the family glitch and come off of it because they're not being paid for. So I think that part's going to be fine. But that free Your Money Honey ad, I don't know if y'all saw it. It was atrocious. There was a few different ones. It was like playing all last year and the year before. I haven't seen them lately. They finally got those down. But those ads were atrocious. It made it sound like it was a government stipend for instant cash of like 5 to 10 grand. And they just had to verify who you were. And basically it was insurance agents just asking the insurance questions without going into too much detail, like doctors and medications and things like that. And they're like, oh yeah, you qualify. And they'd put them on a plan. They never got no cash benefits. They just put them on a plan. That was their cash, like this subsidy, right? But they advertise it as this free money honey, and they were showing spend your money on Louis Vuitton purses and your bills and things like that. I mean, it's absolutely atrocious. So I'm glad to see those gone. And I think they're trying to lock some of that down. Now, I think they're going to do a big swing like this, like backwards, pre-COVID. And I think part of that is because there's so much fraud, so much waste going on that they're like, we need to go back to a time that this wasn't happening. And pre-COVID, it wasn't. Now, I think once they do that, they're going to realize there was some things that took place because of the COVID years, the low income SCP, the extra subsidies, things like that, that they're going to realize, oh, well, we maybe reeled in too much. And then in 2026, we get another proposal that maybe puts some of this back into it. It's almost like a reset and then add back. I could see that happening. But I think they're going to revert back. The only way that's not going to happen is if agents like us, we have 30 days to comment on it. And we can send in our comments. We can even advise them on, I wouldn't do this, but I would do this, right? Give them even some other type of credible feedback to help maybe stop fraud or ever thought processes like, going to December 15th is going to kill us. January 30th would actually be better. I mean, what does it matter? You still have a February 1st effective date, right? That's still not changing. So what does it matter if it's January 15th or January 30th that we can enroll? But the only way any of those voices are truly going to, I think, be heard is if we all kind of get on the same page and look at this bill and be like, okay, what in this is just like an absolute hardship for us, a no-go? And if we can all agree on that, then we all need to go to the comment section with the same type of comment, attacking the same piece of the legislation. Because if nothing else, maybe you can get that piece overturned or pulled out, because most of it, I honestly think is going to go through. I was just on the CMS large agency group call this week. It's the first one we've had this year, because they kept getting canceled because of the new administration and they were still resetting CMS. And we tried to talk about it on that call and they kept shooting us down. They're like, we can't openly talk about this. This is a proposal. We're not allowed to talk about it. The only way you can do it is if you send in comments, they're like, we promise we read every one of them. There's a committee that reads them and takes notes of them and actually, you know, overlooks them. But they weren't allowed to comment on it. So that was kind of interesting. And then another interesting thing on that call, though, there's been a lot of complaint through the agent community, of course, that especially with some of the new rules with the fraud, that our books are, you can't transfer them, you can't sell them, you can't pass them on because your writing number has to be attached. The salesperson writing number has to be attached. So the minute you change that, you lose that book of business. So CMS is actually investigating that, and they're considering trying to figure out a like across the board system to fix this, where if somebody, you know, dies, retires, or sells their book, they can have a viable option to do that. So they are looking at that, and we've been pushing on that for a year. I mean, practically screaming from the rooftops on those calls, because the carriers are just locking people in. It's just like some ACA carriers, like once you're contracted with them, it doesn't matter who you're working with, whether you like them or not like them, you are stuck. Doesn't matter the contract level, you are stuck. I mean, Blue Cross of Texas is one of the worst. And I used to know every loophole to get somebody still through, but when the new ruling in July came out, Blue Cross of Texas read that in a whole different direction than anybody else did. And they won't even let us use those, even though it is viable to switch somebody. We can switch them, but you're going to lose your block of business. They're going to keep it. It's going to turn into a house account. The current FMO loses, you lose, and the Blue Cross keeps it. I mean, I think that's theft. And HAFA is trying to get that straightened out with Blue Cross. There's lawsuits right now on that. There's lawsuits with CMS. There is lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit right now going on between CMS and a lot of the agent community. HAFA's got a lot of them. NABID has lawsuits. There's individual lawsuits. Integrity has lawsuits. AmeriLife has lawsuits. They're all suing right now. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens, because you got to remember, we've lately been so focused on the ACA changes and just trying to get their open enrollment with the drug thing. We all forget what was left on the table last summer with Medicare. Remember, pulling marketing money, pulling overrides, pulling all the stuff that got halted and reverted back in a court in Texas. But it's still technically on the table. It's never been closed. They said we're going to reconvene on this year. So that's all going to come back to the wayside too, that they're going to go back to court on this year, on top of this ACA stuff. I said last year that 2026 is going to be harder than 2025. I still stand by that. I think it is. We may even have a hard 2027 at this rate. And we may not see some relief until towards the end of the new administration 4 years, when finally what they're doing finally takes effect. It's going to be a wild ride. I really feel it for the next couple of years. I was trying to find my notes. I actually took that proposal and I ran it through ChatGPT. And I'm trying to find it where it went. Let me put it into this account. No, not that one. Go back. Here it is. Okay, here it is. So something else that was really interesting, and I think this is probably going to hurt a lot of people. They are proposing that there will be no longer any $0 premiums. That there'll be a minimum of a $5 premium, especially on an auto renewal. So those people that you can't get a hold of that ultimately have a $0 plan when they auto renew, even if they theoretically today would qualify for a $0 plan, next year they're not gonna, it'll be a $5 plan. Well, if they don't pay attention that they got a bill, get a credit card in there, they're gonna lose their insurance, right? And if you couldn't get a hold of them, chances are the carrier's not gonna be able to get a hold of them either, and they're gonna lose their insurance. So I could see millions of Americans losing insurance right then and there, which I wonder what they're gonna do with that. I wonder if that will create an SEP that they're gonna allow for that change. Also, it could, now this is not in there, this is me thinking out loud here, because they're doing away with the extended subsidies. So the rates are going to go up. But we've had inflation. So before the extended subsidies, before COVID, we were selling it. It was fine. The extended subsidies has really helped. But then now the last few years, we've had this huge inflation, which is absolutely affecting insurance premiums, but the extra subsidies are paying for it. So they're going to take that off. I'm wondering though, if everybody though that's on a plan pays a minimum of $5, if that would help the inflation side where carriers could also maybe keep the premiums a little lower because they're paying something. Or maybe subsidies would go farther, because $5 doesn't sound like a lot, but when you talk about $5 on millions of Americans every month, that's a lot of money. So I'm curious to see how that will affect things. I know it's going to affect as far as people auto renewing and trying to get a hold of your book. That's going to create even a bigger frenzy and a bigger nightmare. But ultimately, on the back side, once it settles in, will it help the cost? Because now everybody's paying a little bit. And I'm not actually against this, but I think it should have been always like this. I should have think you should have had to pay something, even if it's $1, pay something. It shouldn't be free. Because then it just creates frenzies and entitlements and fraud because they don't need somebody to pay for it to activate it and things like that. Obviously, I think we all know this, the gender affirming thing is coming off. Like they're no longer going to ask those questions. Thank goodness. Those are awkward when you do have to ask them. I don't know if they're going to go back to asking for proof of SEPs. To me, they should. That would also kind of whittle out a lot of the fraud. They don't really need to cancel the SEPs. They just need to make people prove that there was an SEP. But I'm not sure what they're going to do with that. I know they are going to tighten the SEPs according to this. I wonder if they're going to raise the income eligibility again. Because let's be honest, Texas, we're all in Texas on the call right now, is not an expanded Medicaid state, right? And they keep raising that threshold of barrier entry to get on a plan. I mean, before long, you're going to be having to make $20 an hour as a single person just to get the bare minimum plan, but yet they can't get on Medicaid or anything else. So I don't know what they're going to do with that with inflation. I personally think the bare minimum, if I was in government, should be, and it was at one time, whatever the state's minimum wage number is times 40 hours a week, whatever that equals to for a full-time employee, that should be the bare minimum. Because I am a big component and a big believer. This is kind of where I swing a little bit both ways. If you work full-time, I don't care what you're doing for a living, you are contributing to society, you are trying to do something with yourself, you deserve health insurance. And I think that should be the minimum barrier of entry to get a plan. Some people just can't, whether it's physically, mentally, or whatever, they just don't have enough sandwiches at the picnic, let's be honest, to hold a high-paying job. And they were born that way, right? Or they're just that way. And I don't think we should discriminate that somebody like that doesn't deserve insurance. They are still doing their part and they deserve insurance. So I think personally that the barrier of entry should be the minimum wage times 40 for the state. or times 34 for the state, something like that. Because right now they just keep raising it, and they're just raising it to raising it. I mean, a couple of these states had a minimum raise in a few years. I mean, Washington, I think, is like $1,500 an hour. I mean, yeah, they can afford to pay more if they're working, but Texas, we're still at $775. That's low. Does anybody even know what that is off the top of your head? I'm gonna do the math on it. 775 times 40 times 50, you get 2 weeks off a year.
36,920.
No,
Wait.
that's not right. 775 times 40 hours.
16,120.
Well, no, you gotta figure it out at 15,500. Because most people get 2 weeks off throughout the year. And that is before they take taxes out. So once they take taxes out, they're looking at what, take home $12,000? Right? Well, I mean, they are literally at the top. And there are some states that minimum wage is only $7.25. Actually, less than us. And we're one of the lower states, but there is some states less than us. At that, that's $14.5. Then they pay Uncle Sam. I mean, they're lucky to take home $12,000. I mean, that's hard to live on. There's no way they can afford $300 a month for health insurance. And $300 doesn't sound like much, but ultimately that is 1/3 of their income for the year. That's a lot when you look at it like that. DACA has already been changed. I think we talked about that before. They're just ineligible right now. This one, insurers may require individuals to pay any past due premiums before enrolling coverage. That's actually already a thing. It's in there, but the carriers already do that. Now, if you swap carriers, you can get around it. But if you ever go back, like Blue Cross, I've seen it a million times. They were on Blue, they got behind, they dropped Blue, they switched carriers because they didn't want to pay it. Well, then 2 years later, they had to go back on Blue and they paid their initial premium, but it still didn't activate, and they couldn't figure out why, because they had to pay that back premium before they would activate the plan. So that's already a thing. Let's see. I found my notes, so I'm going off of them now. The stricter income verifications, I actually don't have a problem with that because that will help with the fraud. We've had a couple of clients that actually make $80,000 a year, and they would get changed to where they were making 20, so they get free insurance, and they knew better. They were just being stolen, and we kept having to put them back. It was really annoying. They end up with tax consequences because of it. Then we had to fight for an updated 1095-A because it wasn't their fault. So I don't really have a problem with that. We already talked about the strengthening the verification process, depending on what it is. I'm for that. Some of this is like user fees and stuff. I honestly don't really know how that affects it. That might be more on the carrier side, which ultimately I guess could make premiums go up, but it's like 18 cents and $1. It's not a lot. But ultimately, I think my personal biggest concerns are the shortened enrollment window, the $5 payment, and not because I don't think it should be a payment, but just for all those people that have been on this for years that just auto renewed at $0 premiums. I think they're going to end up losing their coverage because they're not paying attention and, not answering our calls, not answering the carrier's calls, and just not paying attention. And at the end of the day, adults need to adult. That is on them, but it's still going to happen, and it's still going to affect your business. Because even though we will sit here and say adult needs to adult, well, if you got a 200-person book and 50 of them that happens to, that's a substantial financial hit for you. So we can say they should adult all day long, but at the end of the day, that hurts our pocketbook, not theirs. So it's going to be hard on us. What are y'all's thoughts? Karen?
I mean, I'm just trying to figure out why they're sending out the CMS stuff when Dr. Oz is not even doing the confirmation hearing tomorrow. Aren't they jumping the gun to send this out? Because he may totally gut it.
They might, but if it locks it in now, I don't know how, it may lock it in for a year before he does get to gut it. I don't know if they can do an executive order and change it or not. They might,
All depends on if they find fraud.
right? I mean, I'm going to DC in April, the end of April with HAFA because the Texas legislation is going to be in-house, I guess, and she's meeting them. And since it's Texas, I want to go. I didn't get to meet Texas when I was up there before. I did get to sit and talk to Senator Wyden's people, which is the people that actually wrote the 2020 bill for the Inflation Reduction Act, and got to talk to them and ultimately explain to them how this is hurting in the long run. And they didn't realize it was doing that. And they had me write a whole paper on it, but I didn't get to meet any of the Texas people. So I'm going back in April to talk with the Texas people. Because Texas, if y'all noticed or paying attention, they tried to go state exchange last year. It got shut down, but they tried. We don't want that to happen. It's going to be worse if they go state exchange. The other state exchanges we deal with, they have all their own problems. They have less fraud, I'll give them that, but they have 900 other issues we have to deal with.
Yeah, wasn't it Governor Abbott that wanted the state exchange?
Him or was it Cruz?
No, because Cruz doesn't have anything to do with it because he's national. But I think it was Governor Abbott that wanted it.
Well, the states want it because they get all this money to do it. But then they don't realize how much money it takes to build the platform to actually write everybody on, and how much money it takes to hire people to do it. So the federal wants you on it because they'll just pay you a lump sum to get it off their plate because it costs them more than what they're giving you. And the state's like, ooh, give me those millions. But then they end up upside down on those millions because it costs so much to get it up and running. I mean, look at the crazy show that Georgia had this year. What a mess. I mean, it's just absolute insanity. But anyways, that's what I know about it. More I hear about it or the more I read into it, and I'll keep you updated. The first call that I was on, that CMS call, usually they're more interesting than was. That you could tell they're not full back in swing. There wasn't giving us much, and what everybody wanted to talk about, they couldn't. So hopefully next month we'll get a little more information out of them and what's going on. I did enjoy hearing though that they are looking in and trying to figure out a way to have a successor agent or to sell your book or something, you know, because it is a business at the end of the day. And they're really trying to make ACA not a business for us, but it is. All right, guys, any questions on this or any questions about a client or anything else going on? No?
Check your email for the proposal.
Okay. I'll look at it. Well, guys, if you got nothing for me, I'll get off my soapbox and y'all can enjoy the rest of this beautiful day because it is beautiful outside. I was outside for a minute. It is beautiful. So go enjoy it. If you're on spring break with your kiddos, go enjoy those kiddos or those grandkids. And for those of you that I'm going to see in Washington, I'll see you in a couple days. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you. Bye, Rebecca.
Bye.